Hi everyone, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in making Kimri's Clover Bracelet. Remember, you can gather all the materials from us at PotomacBeads.com. If you need any links, they're right below me in that Show More Shop Now button. So we're going to begin our clover design with a button. I have on here a cup button in the crystal slipperet fool. And what I've done is I've put on my right needle an 11 with 2 15s on either side. I've taken one needle on this 0.006 wildfire beading thread through the right hand hole of the button coming out towards the back of the dome, and one through the left hand hole. After that, go ahead and add 1 11 and 2 15s to each needle. After doing so there, what we're going to do is add on a 4mm crystal. The 4mm crystal I have just kind of sitting here on the left needle. I'm also going to take the right needle through the same. In the 4mm crystal, I'm using the smoky topaz color. And then in the 11-0, I'm using the Duracoat Galvanized Dusty Road. And then the 15, I have the Duracoat Galvanized Gold, both the Miyuki brand. Coming out here, we're going to separate our needles. Because we're using 2 needles, pretty much whatever we do on the right, we also do on the left-hand side. Going in then, we're going to put in our next bead, which is going to be our DiscDuo. Coming out of the crystals, I always want you to put in 2 15s, then 1 11 on each needle. If you are not very ambidextrous, you can always sit your needle or poke it into the bead mat to pick up beads with the other side. From here, go ahead and grab your DiscDuo. If you're unfamiliar with the DiscDuo, it is a 6mm bead that has 2 holes and is flattened kind of on both sides. Let that drop down next to the crystal. And then keeping those needles separated, repeat. So we have an 11 on each needle, followed by 2 15s. We're going to add our next crystal onto our needle here. And the same like we did coming out of the button, I want you to pick up one of the 4mm crystals, and you're going to take it through one needle and then through the other needle, with the needles going through the crystal in the same direction so the holes sit vertically aligned with the button holes. I'm going to give each thread a little tight pull and make sure then that goes down next to the DiscDuo. From here, we're going to add some of our bars on, our 2-hole bars, so that way we can come back and catch them when we get into adding our Kheops. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go in here and create the sides of the piece. And I did it on one side so you could see, because again, it's always the same with the right and the left. After coming out the crystal, you're going to add a 15, one of the bars, and a 15. You're spinning back through the crystal. So it'll end up actually that the crystal has 4 strands of thread going through it. That's why I've chosen to use size 12 needles for the project. You can fit 10s through too, but the 4 with the 12 is just going to fit a little bit more nicely on it. Make sure once you have those bars on to kind of push down so that way you don't see a ton of extra thread along the piece. Now we get to separate it out. Kind of looks like wings right now, huh? From here, I want you to put on 2 15s, 1 11, and then go into your next DiscDuo. If you want to, you can work with just the right needle for a little bit, but keep in mind that you want to only do this for about an inch before you switch over and do it the same with the left. You want the tension to stay about the same. But you can see here, I'll show you what I pick up and work with together to get the design. So after I have the 11 on and then 2 15s, I put on my crystal 15, bar 15, go back through just that crystal and make sure to push it down tight along the piece. After you push it down tight along the piece, you can do one more rotation of 2 15s, 11, and the DiscDuo, 11, 2 15s, crystal. After the crystal gets put on, go ahead and put on the 15, the bar, and then the 15. And I should have mentioned that I am using the white Vega luster in that bar. Whoops. And then you're going back through the crystal and pulling it down. Now I'll go back over to using my other needle and do the same thing with the other needle, going through and connecting to the other side of that DiscDuo. So as you get to that 7 or so inches and you're finishing up, you're going to take both needles through the crystal just like we've been doing, but instead of coming back and adding the bars, we're just going to make a loop for our cup button to sit inside of. To do our loop for our cup button, what I want you to do is just like we did on the other side, we're going to be coming out and doing basically 2 of our 15s, then 1 of our 11s, and then we're going to make a big loop with 15s. And our 15s here that we're making the loop with, you're going to want about 32 or so of your 15s. If you want to, you can also use your 11s to do your loop. That's kind of up to you, what kind of size of a loop that you want. So I'm going to be adding all of these beads, and then what I'm going to do is come back through the project, reinforce with this other thread that's kind of hanging out and waiting for me, and do the exact same thing. And then we're going to come back through the project and we're going to get ready to add our next beads. So I have a bunch of beads here on. You want to make sure that when you do your loop that it's big enough for your button or whatever clasp you pick to fit through. If you are using a metal clasp, I would recommend a wire guard or a wire protector. Use that, and that would be put on here as well. So where that would be put on is right after the 11 OC bead if you are doing a different clasp. So I have my loop here that I know is big enough now to fit through my little slipper at end, and I'm going to take my thread and needle back through that 11O that we put on before the 15s. Make that nice tight loop and kind of give a little tight pull down. Coming out of the crystal on the other side here, do the same thing. We're going to do 2 of our 15s. Then I'm going to go into that same 11. If you want to, you could share the 15s too. That's up to you. And then I'm going to reinforce by going back through that entire loop that I just added. So you're sewing back through the entire loop to make it reinforced. Whenever you have a project, you always want to make sure that you have at least 2 threads through wherever the clasp is. It'll make sure, because that's where it gets the most wear and tear, that it's a little bit more durable. I have both threads then coming out through that 11 OC bead. Just give a nice tight pull. Do a little check before you go any further, making sure that your clasp will fit onto your button. Once you're done coming down the bracelet and after you've reinforced the clasp, I want you to take your needles and thread back through each side so that you're ending through the last, or I'm sorry, what would be the last DiscDuo. It's going to be the first now that we're turned around and going the other way. So we're coming out the DiscDuo and we're going to start adding in our Kheops. And I have the Kheops in that light camel gold color that we'll be adding in. And we're going to basically be jumping from the DiscDuo to the actual bars here. To do so, you're going to start out with a series of 1 15, then 2 of our 11s on your needle. From here, we're going to put on our Kheop. When you put on your Kheop, you want your thread and needle coming out the back of the Kheop. We're going to call the back of the Kheop where there are 2 holes on one side of the triangle. So we're going to be basically going into one of the legs of the triangle, coming out the back. This is always going to be the case as we go along and add our little clovers. When we're coming out the back, add a 15, then an 11, and then a 15 onto your needle. Go back through the clover, through that second hole, coming in towards the top of the point. Give a nice tight little yank on that because you don't want any extra thread showing. And then we're going to sew into the second hole of the bar that's there. Once you're into the second hole of that bar, we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So again, we're sewing up basically from the point of the Kheop up towards the top where there's those 2 holes, because the Kheops can be a little difficult to work with. This is helpful to have it that way. And then you're going to add a 15, 11, 15 onto your needle, go down through the Kheop. Again, because of the way that nature that it's sitting, give a tight little yank, making sure that you're pulling your thread and not right where your needle is, because that's going to damage the thread that's there at the needle connection. From here, we're going to repeat, so you're going to do 2 11s, and then 1 15, and then we get to sew through our DiscDuo. And there is our first little clover. On the other side, exact same thing. We're going to do it one more time on this side, and then I'll go back and switch to the other side. So while I have this needle in my hand, I'm going to do 1 15, 2 11s, put on my Kheop, going out through the point and coming out through the flat base with the 2 holes. 15, 11, 15 are going to decorate the top of the Kheop. Come down through the second hole of the Kheop towards the point and tighten up your thread. Sew through that second hole of the bar, and that'll get your Kheop to lay in place. Pick up your next Kheop, again going from the point side to the side that has the 2 openings. Decorating the top. If you don't want to decorate the top, you can literally take your needle and thread right down through the other hole. I'm putting on a 15, 11, 15. Kimberly did 3 11s on the top of hers, or 4 11s I think. She actually did a little bit bigger. Coming out the Kheop then again, we are going to do our 2 11s right after the Kheop, 1 15, and then into the DiscDuo. Now that I have 2 on the right hand side, I'm going to do the exact same thing on the left hand side, getting my first 2 of my clover petals finished and in place. Once I'm done the left hand side, I'll go back, do 2 more on the right, then 2 more on the left, vice versa. I don't like to get about an inch away from one another before going over and doing the other side, so I make sure that I have the same amount of tension on the project. Once you have your last clover done, you're going to reinforce your clasp after coming out of the DiscDuo. So I have 1 needle that I have just coming out of the DiscDuo and hanging out and waiting for the other one. The other needle I've taken up through the 3 seed beads, the crystal, the 3 seed beads, and then out through the top of the cup button. When I come out the top of the cup button, you want to make sure you come out the 15, otherwise it can sometimes be hard to catch on to. Your thread might be getting a little short. You're going to go through the 11 and the 15, down through the cup button on the other side. When you go down through the cup button on the other side, you're then going to go through the other leg of the beads that sit below that crystal. So you can see kind of where my beads are coming out of them. And guess what? Then you have your thread ends right next to one another. When you work with 2 needles, it's really easy to put on the clasp to reinforce the clasp, and this gives me an opportunity to knot off the threads together. And then I'm going to keep one of my threads on the needle, probably the one that you didn't go back through and reinforce, because that's going to tend to be a little bit longer. And I'm going to take that thread and needle further down in my project. So when I burn off my thread ends, I like to, if possible, separate those threads. That way I don't have both ends in the same place. So I've knotted twice, doing a square knot, right over left, left over right. And then I'm going to take this thread and needle that's still on there, and I'm going to, I know this is the longer one, so it already came out the DiscDuo, so I don't want to go back down through the DiscDuo. If you can, and there's space, go up through the 11, bring it out through that crystal, and I'm literally just going to burn it off there because you won't be able to see it because of that raku cup button right there. And burning down. There we go. The main thing that you want to make sure of when you are burning down on the project is that you are not burning a thread that is connected to your project. Nothing is quite as depressing as doing that by accident. So whether or not you do the Clover bracelet, that you kind of bring it out, Kimberly did hers a little bit more simplistic, that she did not connect the bar here at the front, and she has it that it swings a little bit. I thought I'd kind of expand it a little bit more and bring that clover. And you can see whether or not you use green is really going to look like the clover, but we still have that 4-petal design that's listed in the description basically of the project, calling it the Clover design. This one highlights the crystal a little bit more, bringing the bar out and using those Kheops to highlight a little bit. This one here has them closer together, so they look a little bit more like that clover. So depending on which kind of version you do or what look you're going for, you can have fun creating this Clover bracelet. Thanks so much for joining me in making the Clover bracelet. Remember, depending on the colors that you choose, it will look much more like a 4-leaf clover or even have that nice floral design. Again, if you need any of the materials, below the video there are links to the exact products that were used in the designs that you can purchase from us at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Remember also, if you give a little like button, it helps us to know exactly what videos you want to see, what designs you like, and which direction we go with our YouTube videos. You can also hit that little bell below me and subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates when we do new designs, new products, as well as new Better Beater episodes. As always, have fun and enjoy making your very own Clover bracelet.